Are you ready to venture into the shadowy realms of folklore, where the line between reality and legend blurs? Today we're exploring the unsettling world of skinwalkers. In Navajo culture, a skinwalker, or Yi-Naldlushi, is a malevolent witch who can transform into, possess, or disguise themselves as an animal. While the concept may sound fantastical for those who believe, the fear is very real. From a seasoned hunter's chilling encounter in the New Mexico wilderness to inexplicable events at a community hospital near Navajo lands, and even to a mysterious disappearance on a trail fraught with eerie occurrences, these tales will challenge your understanding of the world as you know it. Welcome back to Two Tricks, One Treat, your go-to channel for the mysterious, the eerie, and the unexplained. As always, two of our stories are fabrications, while one is rooted in unsettling reality. After you discover which tale is true, let us know if you guessed correctly by leaving a comment below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss our daily dives into the unknown. Now, let's begin. Story 1. The Beast of the New Mexico Woods. Ethan, a seasoned hunter and an ex-Navy SEAL, had always found solace in the New Mexico wilderness. Standing at 6'4" and weighing 250 pounds, he was an imposing figure, not just to people but to animals as well. On this particular day, he was deep in the woods, rifle slung over his shoulder, eyes scanning the horizon for deer. Just as he was about to wrap up and head home, a magnificent buck appeared in his line of sight. It was one of the largest he'd ever seen. Taking aim, he fired a shot that hit the buck squarely, ensuring a swift end. With nightfall approaching, Ethan quickly packed up his gear before heading over to claim his prize. As Ethan approaches his downed buck, an imposing wolf steps out from the forest clearing, heading straight for the fresh kill. Unbelievable. Even the wildlife is going for records today, Ethan thinks. He raises his voice, shouting to startle the wolf away. But instead of retreating, the wolf halts, locking eyes with Ethan, then resumes its path toward the deer. What's going on here? Ethan puzzles. Normally any wolf, let alone a solitary one, would bolt at the sight of a human. This one, however, seems completely undeterred. Both Ethan and the wolf continue their respective paths toward the buck, as if destined for a confrontation. The wolf was to Ethan's left, and both were about 30 feet from the downed buck. Ethan, always prepared, had a handgun holstered at his side. He began to reach for it as the wolf showed no signs of veering off. At about 20 feet from the buck, Ethan halted, and the wolf, sensing his pause, did likewise. "Move along now," Ethan shouted once more, but the wolf remained motionless. Taking his handgun, Ethan fired a warning shot near the wolf. In response, the wolf's fur bristled and it let out a low growl. "I don't want to have to shoot you," Ethan warned, aiming his gun directly at the wolf. As he looked through the scope, his finger hovering over the trigger, the wolf seemed to relent, turning away from the buck. Letting out a breath he didn't know he was holding, Ethan watched as the wolf slowly retreated toward the forest. Just before vanishing into the trees, the wolf turned back and locked eyes with Ethan one final time, as if issuing a silent challenge before disappearing into the darkness. As darkness enveloped the landscape, Ethan managed to secure his prize buck onto his sled and began the trek back to his cabin. All the while, he couldn't shake the sensation of being watched, as if eyes were following him from the depths of the forest. Each time he glanced over his shoulder, however, he saw nothing but shadows and trees. Once inside his cabin, the remainder of the evening passed without incident. But as he lay in bed, deep in sleep, he was jolted awake by a haunting howl that seemed to emanate from just outside his window. Guided by the moonlight filtering through the glass, Ethan peered out and saw a silhouette about 50 feet away from his cabin. It was the wolf, and it growled, locking eyes with him once more. "Unbelievable," Ethan muttered to himself. He promptly shut and locked the window before crawling back into bed. A creature of habit, Ethan always ensured that his cabin was securely locked, a practice that gave him some comfort now, despite the unsettling presence outside. After all, he was a battle-hardened veteran. A lone wolf, no matter how unnerving, was not going to rattle him. Just as he was drifting back to sleep, Ethan's ears picked up the unmistakable sound of claws scraping against the front door. Doubting his own senses momentarily, he strained to listen. There it was again, a clear, deliberate scratching as if something were attempting to claw its way in. What on earth is happening? Ethan pondered, his mind racing. Deciding it was better to be safe than sorry, he grabbed his phone, activated its flashlight, and cautiously made his way to the front door. The cabin was pitch black, save for the narrow beam of light from his phone. He switched off the flashlight and cautiously peered around the edge of the window curtain. There, sitting right in front of the door as if awaiting an invitation, was the wolf. As Ethan studied it, trying to fathom its intentions, the wolf's head snapped toward him with an almost supernatural speed. Startled, Ethan recoiled from the window. That was the last straw. Ethan strode over to his gear and retrieved his handgun. "This is your final warning," he muttered, thinking of the wolf. With weapon in hand, he returned to the window, only to find that the wolf had vanished. Irritated yet relieved, Ethan started back toward his bedroom. Just then, a thunderous crash reverberated through the cabin, as if something or someone had thrown itself against the door with incredible force. Rushing back to the window, Ethan's eyes widened at the sight before him. The creature still bore a resemblance to the wolf, its fur as black as coal, but it had grown even larger and now seemed capable of standing upright. It was using its front limbs to pound against the door, each impact threatening to splinter the wood and burst it open. Without a second thought, Ethan flung open the window and emptied his handgun into the monstrous figure. The creature responded with an agonized, ear-piercing howl before darting off into the darkness. Adrenaline surging through his veins, Ethan sprinted to his gear, quickly reloading his handgun. He then shoved the kitchen table against the door as a makeshift barricade, bracing himself for the creature's next assault. Ethan sat on the floor, laying against the kitchen counter wall, gun in hand, ready for whatever came next. But eventually, the adrenaline subsided, and the now calm atmosphere and summer night sound of crickets stirring awake on the floor of the main room, Ethan was greeted by the soft light of dawn filtering through the windows. He was still alive. Cautiously, he moved the table barricade and peered out the window to ensure the coast was clear before stepping outside. When he inspected the door, he found it marred by deep claw marks, a haunting testament to the previous night's terror. With haste, he gathered his gear and vacated the cabin. A week later, Ethan returned, this time accompanied by a friend. They discovered the cabin in shambles. The door had been forced open, windows shattered, and furniture overturned. Whether it was mere coincidence or a deliberate act by the creature that had attacked him, Ethan couldn't be sure. But one thing was clear. He wasn't ready to face whatever lurked in those woods just yet. They secured the cabin as best as they could, boarding up the broken windows and damaged door, and left, making a silent pact to one day return and confront the malevolent force that had marked him. Story 2, Healing or Haunting. In a sleepy town near Navajo lands, nestled between the arid mountains and expansive deserts, lies a small community hospital. The hospital had always been a peaceful place where routine was king and everyone knew everyone else. However, a single incident changed the way the staff viewed not just their job, but their grasp of the world itself. It was a moonless night when the ambulance brought him in. A man found in the desert, severely dehydrated and with multiple wounds that defied explanation. His injuries were not just odd, they were unsettling. Claw marks and bite wounds that should have been infected looked oddly sanitized. His dehydration levels seemed incompatible with life, but still, he breathed. When they took him to the emergency room, a strange tension filled the air. The typical hospital sounds, beeping monitors, hushed conversations, were accompanied by a palpable sense of dread that seemed to spread like mist. Nurses and doctors who approached him started to feel an inexplicable fear. Their hands trembled as they administered treatment, something they had done countless times before without such emotions. The man's eyes seemed to follow them, understanding, calculating, knowing. Then came the first sign that this was no ordinary patient. His wounds began to heal at an unnatural rate. The man had arrived with third-degree burns covering the left side of his body, lacerations on his arms that looked as though they were claw marks, and a punctured lung that made every breath a laborious effort. Under any normal circumstances, these injuries would have required weeks of hospital care, skin grafts, and a litany of medications to aid the healing process and manage pain. However, within a mere few hours of admission, the burned skin started to regenerate as if it were time-lapse footage of a healing process. The staff watched in disbelief as the red, blistered flesh smoothed over and regained its natural color, leaving not even the faintest scar behind. The claw-like lacerations on his arms similarly sealed themselves shut, defying medical logic. Perhaps most unsettling of all was how his punctured lung seemed to repair itself, the hiss of the oxygen mask growing less and less necessary as his breathing grew steadily less labored. And as if his supernatural healing wasn't enough, they soon realized that the man could understand every language spoken around him. A nurse whispered something in Navajo, her native language, to another staff member. To their shock, the man responded fluently despite having no known connections to the Navajo or any reason to know the language. When they tried Spanish, then French, and even Latin, he understood them all, replying with unsettling ease. No one wanted to be alone with him, especially as the night wore on. Staff started experiencing equipment malfunctions, lights flickering, monitors going blank, temperature fluctuations, all concentrated around this one patient's room. The fear was no longer just a feeling, it was a living entity, threading its way through the entire ward. By morning, the man's wounds had almost entirely healed, and just as mysteriously as he arrived, he vanished. The security footage showed the doors to his room opening on their own, but the corridor outside remained empty. He had left no records, no traces, not even fingerprints. It was as if he had never been there, but the haunting atmosphere lingered. The staff couldn't explain it, neither the science-minded doctors nor the more spiritually inclined nurses who knew the Navajo tales of skinwalkers and shapeshifters. All they knew was that they had witnessed something that defied explanation, something that made them question the boundaries of reality. Word spread throughout the hospital, then the town. People offered theories, from scientific anomalies to the stuff of folklore. But no explanation could erase the bone-deep sense of unease that the staff felt. And so the story became a whispered legend, a tale told in hushed tones during late-night shifts, a warning, perhaps, that the world is full of inexplicable phenomena lurking just beyond the veil of what we understand. The hospital returned to its routine, but for those who were there that night, things would never be the same. They continued their duties with a newfound sense of humility towards the mysteries of life, and an unsettling feeling that they were not alone in their quest to understand it. Story 3: The Tattered Woman of Cedar Trail. In the warm months of 2008, a man named Adam Moore mysteriously disappeared. He was last seen meandering along New Mexico's Cedar Trail, distinguishable by his vivid orange headband, a shirt of the same hue, and contrasting white shorts. That particular day, the trail was rife with odd happenings. A group of owls were unusually active during the middle of the day, hooting incessantly and even launching aerial attacks on hikers who dared to linger or approach too closely. Additionally, an unnerving coyote was spotted skulking at the forest's edge, occasionally making false charges at clusters of hikers, but never actually attacking. Adding to the day's strangeness was a disheveled woman, her clothes in tatters, who was asking people to assist her in locating a bag she claimed to have lost in the woods. A couple who had been trailing behind Adam noted that he paused to engage in conversation with this mysterious woman. Although he appeared reluctant, he seemed willing to hear her out. The couple walked past Adam and the woman, but stopped before they were out of sight. They saw Adam walk away from the woman, starting along the trail again, and waved at them, thanking their apparent worried looks for his safety. However, they soon noticed that Adam was no longer following them. Concerned, they retraced their steps back to the last place they had seen him and the unkempt woman, but neither was anywhere to be found. They reported this unsettling encounter to a park ranger as they exited the trail. That very night, a group of teenagers drove to the trail. Though it was frowned upon to walk the trail at night, it wasn't against the rules. Only after a minute or so of walking the trail, they were met with the unsettling sound of a man's anguished wail, echoing from the forest's depths. Alarmed, they promptly left the trail and alerted the authorities, who arrived only to find the area devoid of any signs of distress. Days later, when Adam failed to contact his family, he was officially declared missing. His vehicle was discovered in the parking area of the trailhead, but an extensive search of the surrounding woods turned up nothing. Exactly a week after Adam was reported missing, a macabre discovery was made. A lone human hand, later confirmed to be Adam's, was found lying on the trail. Despite another thorough search by authorities, no additional evidence was uncovered. Police were now certain something killed Adam and the killer had left the hand as a warning sign or to taunt police. 2 months after Adam's disappearance, a trio of burly college football players decided to hike the trail. As they were making their way back at dusk, they spotted a disheveled woman standing off to the side of the path. The group slowed down and began whispering among themselves. "That woman matches the description of the guy that disappeared the other month," one of them said. They all knew about the unsettling events that had transpired on the trail, including the mysterious woman in tattered clothes. As they cautiously continued forward, the woman lifted her head and locked eyes with them. In a voice tinged with desperation, she pleaded, "Can you help me? I've lost my daughter in the woods." Frozen for a moment, the group suddenly sprang into action. "Grab her!" one of them shouted. All three lunged at the woman, attempting to restrain her. To their astonishment, she effortlessly shook them off as if they were mere children trying to hold down a wild animal. She then darted into the surrounding woods. As the young men picked themselves up, they peered into the dark forest, only to catch a fleeting glimpse of a lone coyote vanishing into the night. After the bewildering encounter, the trio immediately reported the incident to the authorities. Another search was launched, scouring the woods for any sign of the mysterious woman, but once again nothing was found. The ordeal didn't end there for the young men. Upon returning home, all three were struck down with a debilitating fever that confined them to their beds for an entire week. Now, warning signs are posted all along the Cedar Trail. These caution hikers to be vigilant of a woman asking for assistance and to report any unusual activity to law enforcement. Yet, despite these advisories, no further sightings of the disheveled woman have been reported. As for Adam Moore, his case remains unsolved, leaving a community grappling with a chilling enigma. The only theory that seems to fit this string of bizarre and unsettling events is deeply disturbing: the possibility that a Skinwalker, a malevolent shape-shifting entity from Navajo lore, may be responsible for this haunting mystery. Which of these unsettling narratives had you on the edge of your chair? Could it be Ethan's harrowing encounter with a wolf-like creature in the New Mexico wilderness? Maybe it was the inexplicable events at a community hospital near Navajo lands that shook your core, or was it the mysterious disappearance on Cedar Trail that left you pondering the unknown? The true story among these is the unsettling events that unfolded at a community hospital near Navajo lands in 2019. In Healing or Haunting, medical professionals at a small community hospital were confronted with a patient whose injuries defied all medical logic. Arriving with severe burns, claw marks, and a punctured lung, the man's wounds miraculously healed themselves within hours. Adding to the enigma, he demonstrated an uncanny ability to understand multiple languages, including Navajo. The atmosphere around him was so unnerving that even seasoned staff members felt a palpable sense of dread. Despite extensive security measures, the man vanished without a trace the next morning, leaving behind a hospital staff forever changed and deeply unsettled.
Hold on, there's no reason to leave yet. You still need to like and subscribe to the channel. Maybe watch more of our videos. If you don't, well, a skinwalker might try to kick down your door tonight. Don't say I didn't warn you.